we're live. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing great today. And with me is Liam Gauci, Senior Curator of the Malta Maritime Museum and author of In the Name of the Prince, Maltese Corsairs from 1760 to 1798. So let's just say hello to everyone in the chat. Hi, Cross from Campaign Terrain. Good to see you. And hi, Charlene. So, Liam, how about you start by telling us the difference between a pirate and a corsair? Because a lot of people get that confused.
So it's first of all, hi Karl, and thank you for having me this evening. So I think if I've been asked this question 1,000 times, and I will always have a slightly different answer.
Okay.
But the key difference of all this is a piece of paper.
Mhm.
So a corsair, which I would, let's say, change or interchange with privateer when it comes to the legal jargon, is someone who is gets a piece of paper from his sovereign, from his prince, from his duke, from his queen, from his sultan, to sail out in the name of the powers that be, to steal everything and anything that belong to your enemy, to the enemy of your sovereign. And so you are literally working in an environment, in an economic business, which means making money at gunpoint.
So, in modern terms, would that be correct to call them like a private military contractor or something like that?
Yes, close to that, But the only difference, which is very close to what we would have today, is having a bit of a public liability company, where you have a CEO, which in our case would be the captain.
All right.
The board members will be the investors, and at times the CEO is also a member of the board. And you simply get together to rent out a ship, rent out the weapons, buy the food, pay for the crew, and off you go, coming back, to your island base with prizes, and you pay dividends to your shareholders or to the board members and to your crew, and obviously diligently pay taxes, which are again diligently audited by your notary back on land. And this is something which you will find everywhere in Europe. So the idea that listen, because the Maltese and it's Malta and all that. Yes, Malta was quite a good base for it. But you had Livorno, you had Sicily, you had Barcelona, you had the south of France, the north of France with regards to the Atlantic Ocean. You had the Americans doing it during the American Revolution. You had the French doing it in the Indian Ocean. It was everywhere to be seen. Admittedly, it seems that in Malta we were rather good at it, and meaning good at it, meaning that you had hundreds of foreigners a year coming to Malta to work in this kind of business. So these are the corsairs and the privateers. Now, I'm going to complicate matters a bit.
Okay.
Being a corsair or privateer, you could become a pirate. But if you were a pirate, you could not become a corsair or a privateer. And
How is that?
that leads us to understand what a pirate is. A pirate simply is an enemy of all states. So, and a pirate has no allegiances. Probably allegiances would have been to a code of ethics, which, yes, it seems that in the Caribbean, in the famous cases of Pirates of the Caribbean, they had a code of ethics. But these guys were going against, the rest of the world. So it was them against everyone. So they were literally, breaking international law. And so they were enemies of the world, and they would be caught, hanged, and simply, there is no way that they should exist according to international laws of the time.
Actually,
Now,
I had a question about that, if you don't mind me interrupting.
yes.
Would a corsair of an enemy state be treated differently from a pirate?
Um, so a corsair and a pirate, yes, would have been treated differently, of course,
Okay.
100%. But there are exceptions to the rules, and yes, there were times where privateers or corsairs were considered pirates when they actually were not, because it always depends on who your enemy is.
Hmm.
So this if we really want to stretch it, because privateering and corsairing remained legal on the international scene until 1856.
That late?
Yes,
Whoa.
that
All
late.
right.
So any internet any maritime lawyers out there will have read about the international law of 1856, when it was considered that privateering now becomes illegal and no nation can issue a letter of marque. And there's one little reason for that.
Hmm.
America. Britain was petrified of one thing. When they were going to war in the Crimea,
Uh-huh.
so yes, quite apt for today. They realized one thing, that the US had no significant navy to challenge their world empire,
Okay.
but they had a merchant navy, and the American merchant navy was all over the world, including Indochina, including the Atlantic, including Europe, especially France and the Med. And the British realized that if America issued letters of marque to her merchants, her ships would be
Oh.
outnumbered.
Okay.
So they raced to get this done. But as we all know, anybody who's a fan of the American Civil War, we would learn that the South, which lacked no navy, and I skipped a bit. America did refuse to sign this. But once the Civil War started, the North immediately went rushing to Europe to sign this, because they realized that because the South had no navy, they could have privateers.
Okay.
And that would cause a huge problem for them. And so I'm using very broad brushstrokes here, but that was the end of privateering in the international law scene. In Malta, most probably, just to drag you back into the island, we had this activity at least 1820, latest probably 1840, 1830. But we still need to do a lot of research. I have found corsair ships leaving Malta in 1820.
Okay, so that would be under the British Empire, right? Because
Yes.
I think I was under the impression that once the Napoleonic Wars had started and everything, there was a bit of a crackdown with the French and British navies, just like, oi, keep it quiet.
No, no. In fact, the French made use of it,
Hmm.
and there are some lovely sailor songs which I am constantly listening to on YouTube from this period, with regards to French privateers who were quite successful against the British, and to a certain extent. But the British obviously kept on this issuing letters of marque all throughout the Napoleonic Wars and beyond, especially then against the Russians and the Ottomans during the Greek War of Independence.
Okay. Okay, so I see that Earthman Brick, Campaign Terrain, and Questboard Terrain, and Sean Raider have joined us. Hi, everyone. And if anyone has any questions, please do drop them in the chat. Liam, how would a corsairing expedition start? It's like, could you walk us through kind of, because you mentioned the board of directors and investors earlier, and
Yes.
so
So listen, this is a question that get asked quite a lot with regards to how does it start. Now, to start a corsair venture, you need a good base. And once we understand that Malta, especially in the 18th century, had become the perfect, launch pad for such activity, then you understand how a ship is rigged, not rigged out, how a ship gets to become a corsair. It is a long and complicated procedure, which thanks to it being long and complicated and bureaucratic, we have all the details. So that really gives up. That has been the basis and framework of my research, and that puts us on a level which is seldomly found around Europe and around the world with regards to this kind of information. Why? Because they were living within liminality.
Okay.
So they were neither here nor there. They were making where they were taking advantage both of the geography of the island and the limitations of the island. So for us, they had to regulate it so well because they knew that any government in Malta. So we're talking about even with the Spanish before the Knights arrived, and with the French when they were here, and with the British when they were here, and during obviously the Knights of St. John. That regulating this trade and this economic activity would get you money. So this is something that we need to understand. This was an economic activity which was extremely lucrative. Now, there were failures in this lucrative trade, but there were successes as well. And I deal with both of them. So, and even that depends on how you get around, starting a ship. Because if you have a good reputation as a captain, it's going to be easy to get investors investing in you. If you're crap at being a captain and you suffer mutiny after mutiny and you're constantly leaving Malta and coming back with 0 prizes, you're not going to get any investors. It's common sense.
It's practically like the prospectus of a company. Like if the track record of the company is that it's leaking money, then no one will put more money into it.
Exactly. As simple as that. And that is why I love the analogy of it being a company today. So this all starts with a simple captain who, in broad terms, applies with the admiralty of the order that he wants to arm a ship against the enemies of the Holy Catholic Faith. And with that, he's given a yes or a no. And so much more in between. So you get a yes, you can get a no, but you can get a yes with, listen, we suggest that you get a good pilot that knows the Eastern Mediterranean, because all your experience is in the Western Mediterranean. We suggest that you get someone that is accustomed to using square-rigged ships, because you have always used Latin-rigged ships.
Okay.
And so on and so forth.
So I see. It's kind of a way to. So we had some kind of assessor who would say like, okay, this is the track record. This is what you're trying to do. This is how you fill the gap.
Any surveyors out there who go on checking, construction sites or checking ships in harbor, or yachts in harbor, or boats in harbor, your job is as old as the corsairing profession, because any ship had to be checked for the rigors of the corso, and also a captain had to be checked for the rigors of the corso. So you get investors taking their captain to court because he was seasick all the time. What he didn't tell. You get captains who are lambasted by their crew for being constantly drunk.
Okay.
And so obviously these are captains which will their career would peter out
Oh,
within a few years or days, months maybe. So once you get your captain, the captain obviously states what kind of ship he's going to rig out in his application. So that ship is done. Now that ship would need weapons, so he's off to rent out the weapons, or else get rent out weapons from or the order or any merchant or potential armatori, because there's this word in Malta called armatori,
okay.
which are the guys who arm the ships. Now they don't literally arm the ships with weapons, but they have resources at their disposal. So you might have someone who has a private dockyard. You might have someone who has a cotton business, and so he's going to give the captain sails.
Hmm?
Now there were different types of sails. There were winter sails, there were summer sails, there were lighter sails. That anybody who's going to invest in careening the ship, any like a guy who had a pasta factory was an armatore, because he's giving pasta to the corsair ships, and instead of paying in money to invest, you're
Payment in
paying.
kind of thing to investment in resources rather. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got the captain, the ship, the food, the weapons. Then you need the crew. Now the crew was something which you need to also put into consideration the time of year that you're renting out a corsair ship. So during this time, you're going to find a lot of sailors that want to join you in January, or in February. We're already in February. By March, the ships start recruiting on the island.
Hmm.
By May, you're not going to find any good sailors on the island,
I see.
because
Right.
they're all have been recruited by other captains. So there was this race to get your ship ready for summer. Then again, you will always find exceptions. So I must over accentuate one point. There are moments where I am going to be generalizing,
Fair enough. Yeah.
and the beauty of the subject is that there are so many details and we have so much information that I hate generalizing, because we have maybe an answer to most of the questions that anyone is going to ask.
Yeah. I could get that from reading your book and from your
Yeah,
past talks. It's like, yes, we have receipts for everything.
yep,
Everything.
exactly.
So let's see. The End joined us. Hi, The End, and Dungeon Minister. Good to see you, Padre. And Campaign Terrain is saying, am I the only one wondering if the notice behind him is a letter of marque?
I wish, though. That's a well, a bando from Rome, when it was under the occupation of French Republican forces.
All
I've
right.
got a soft touch for the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah, I
I'm
think.
no fan of Napoleon.
I'm
That's
sorry.
just to make things.
Could you say that again? You broke up a little there. You're no fan of?
Sorry. I'm quite a fan of the Napoleonic Wars. Not a fan of Bonaparte.
Yeah, I think you do or used to take part in some Napoleonic reenactment. Yeah.
Yes, yes, back in the day, but back when I had time, when I wasn't writing books um for
Yeah, I hear that takes up quite a bit of time.
yes, yes, it does, and thank God I have a very loving girlfriend who really spends time waiting around for me, because when inspiration hits that I need to write a chapter, unfortunately I need to be here typing away, especially right now because I'm working on my second book. It's starting to infiltrate in every part of my day.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, hi Lisa. Hope you're doing good. Say hi to Thomas as well. And yeah, so we were at the point where you've got the letter of marque, you've got the armatori who have supplied the ship, you've got the sailors. What happens then?
Well, what happens then is it's again there are beautiful exceptions. Now we have exceptions of a guy literally waiting around to leave because they do not have any news from the east, or that they're waiting for good weather, or even worse, they're waiting for um, uh, certain because one interesting thing that we need to consider is the moment that we look at this in a closed view,
Hmm.
we will be put off course. And I give you this reason. Malta is too small not to live within a larger frame.
Fair enough, yeah.
Malta, however, was too important not to be part of the larger frame. Now, I am not advocating that Malta is the center of the world. Malta was the frontier. Malta was a forgotten piece of Europe. And Malta to the Sultan, who was for this period the key enemy of this period, was insignificant. And in my new book, I just finished or not finished, nearly finished. I wish I finished this chapter where I say Malta was a constant rash to the Ottoman policy in the Mediterranean.
It's it
But
kind of thing is like it's not a big threat, but it's in a very awkward place. That kind of thing.
yes, because it's never going to threaten the empire itself.
Yeah, I mean,
But it is constantly leaching upon the richest sea lanes of the Mediterranean. Because let me be very, very clear, and this is something that we need to also, I'm going to throw in a spanner to the works, because we're constantly here talking about the corsairs of the Order of St. John. And anybody who's read my book knows that, it's actually called In the Name of the Prince. So I am discussing corsairs that were flying the flag of the Order of St. John. But one important thing, and this is what I'm dragging you into, that's why before we leave out to harbor, on this little rock in the center of the Mediterranean, on the frontier of the Mediterranean, there weren't only ships flying the flag of the Prince of Malta. So at the same time that you had these corsairs leaving and stealing everything and anything that belonged to the Ottoman Empire, the Order of St. John, intentionally or unintentionally, or maybe a little bit of both, was harboring a community of men which gave zero FUCKs to what Europe was saying. And they were harboring corsairs or investors who had the power of unflaring upon the Mediterranean flags like that of Tuscany, that of Sardinia, that of Spain, of France, of Great Britain, of Russia. And yes, we also have a consul in Malta giving the power of letter of marque of a corsair ship from Modena. Land-locked Modena was issuing letters of marque from Malta. Now, this is not, something that it's rather funny. But it also reminds us what Malta was in the 18th century. And to a certain extent, I still feel it today on the island all around us. It is this need for us to find ways of creating economic activity with extremely limited resources at our disposal. And once you understand that, you can understand what was happening in Malta in the 18th century. It was, and obviously corsairing was not the sole, sole driver of the Maltese economy, but it was a very powerful one. And it was a powerful one because it was making money, and it was bringing stuff which Europe was thirsty for. So you had the spices, and you had the cloth. So cloth, we're talking about silk, we're talking about leather, we're talking about linen. There are dozens of types of linen which is being captured and being sold off to Europe. This was where the money was. So these corsair ships were not going to be capturing gold. We have examples. There are examples of corsairs striking it lucky and finding coins and these fabled treasure chests with money. But it was usually cotton, coffee, lots of it. Talking about coffee, I'm going to have another sip. Coffee. It was these it was these things that these corsairs were looking for. And it wasn't only the Order of St. John. It was all these nations that I just mentioned. Anybody in the Mediterranean was trying to do this kind of thing.
Okay, so just to get to understand this, to see if I got this clearly, even if a ship was sailing out of Malta, the letter of marque was not necessarily issued by the Grand Master, is that correct?
Exactly. And this got the and this, you had times when the Grand Master, would go one eye and say, "Oh no, you shouldn't be doing this," but "Oh no," and then we'll go, "But yeah, we need food, so go and steal cattle from North Africa." Then you had, the French getting, Europe is always trying to whip these little rogue nations into shape. And then and this is where again I see reflections of today. Diplomats of the Order of St. John were good enough to remind the French that, if they want, they can also issue letters of marque in Malta, because we are a neutral country and we will allow them to issue letters of marque in Malta to fight against the British. And it's much easier to recruit in Malta because taxes are low. Our sailors are well accustomed to French ships, and we are accustomed to using French weapons. And so it was a way, hey, don't slap us too hard, because without us, your Levant trade is not going to do well.
The more I think about it, the more it sounds like a pitch for modern financial services.
Yeah, yes, with some guns and swords thrown in.
Oh, yeah, of course, but apart from that.
Apart from that, we're nearly there. We're at a modern startup.
Okay, so actually that raises the question. I mean, what happens if a ship with a French letter of marque and a ship with an English letter of marque are in the same harbor and
We had so many examples of them fighting in harbor.
really? All right.
Yes, we have descriptions of the order saying, "Listen, we told them just to leave. You cannot stay here." Or we tried to revittle the ship at the late at night, so that the British ships will not realize that we're giving French. And this brings us even today. If you're in, you grab a map of the harbor, you see French Creek and English Creek and Galley Creek in between. So
Is that why that's is that why
yes,
that's
yes, because there was, let's not keep them next to each other. And this comes from the 18th century, and this is what I'm working on, and this is what hopefully my readers will be reading about. Is I'm going to start the new book from 1747 all the way to 1798, and it starts bang in the middle during the War of Austrian Succession.
okay?
But then you've got the 7 Years' War, you've got the Russo-Turkish War, you've got the war with of France with Tunis and Tripoli, Venice with Tripoli. Then you've got the French Revolution, and constantly in all this, you get all these nations arming their ships in Malta, with a huge headache for the Order of St. John. But the Order of St. John, although it was neutral, although it was trying to live on a knife's edge, or literally on a knife's edge, it really got good at it. It got very good at it, and I think it reflects also in the 19th century and how Malta and the Maltese um, uh, decided that their future would be in the early 19th century. So in my humble opinion, corsairing gives a context to understand what was the Maltese, what was Maltese society in the 18th century.
Okay, how's that?
So I'll give you one example. So you're looking at, communication with Europe,
Hmm?
always happening by sea. And so you have people like, Shuirep Isward, who was a merchant who we immediately find active in Malta in the 1740s, whose son, today you can Google Isward and you get some beautiful 18th century music written by his son.
His son would be Niccolo, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Niccolo Isward. We've got a band club named after him. This guy, his father was a merchant who was constantly investing on corsair ventures, but he sired a son who became quite the revolutionary, very pro-French, who would eventually escape from Malta and live his life in Paris because he was very pro-French, because France was offering liberty, equality, without the riffraffs that were the aristocrats, and so they were hoping for a better Malta. And in my humble opinion, that is the reason why France conquered the island within days. But it was that false hope that got France, kicked the French Republican France kicked out of the island within 2 years, and in a civil war within 3 months. And it was this contact with Europe, with enlightened Europe, this contact with being able to bear arms, with this idea that you had Michel-Anton Vassalli, who was reading, who was writing the first Maltese dictionary, published Maltese dictionary, because there was De Soldanis before him. This guy was a cotton merchant.
All right.
He made money to publish his dictionary from cotton. And you cannot sell cotton if it wasn't for ships. You cannot have ships if you don't have a merchant class. You cannot have that merchant class not investing in other things, just like corsairing, because with selling cotton only is not going to get you any far. Because, all right, we can sell cotton, but you've got Egypt, who is producing much more cotton than us. you've got America producing cotton, you've got the Caribbean producing cotton. What are we going to be selling? So, okay, let's sell our cotton, but add to it what we are bringing in from the Corso, the
Okay.
silk from India, the calico from just to put you into perspective, I think India at this time is producing over 25% of the world's cotton, textiles. So forget Britain and Manchester, and that cotton industry was coming later on. India was the key,
Okay.
and all this is coming through, obviously, or via the sea, through the British, through the Dutch, Portuguese, Spanish, etc., or via land, Afghanistan, and then all to into Egypt, and then by sea to Constantinople. And who happens to fall upon these very, very richly laden ships? The Maltese corsairs. Um, uh, uh, and 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 I use Maltese corsairs in the broadest of terms, because I drag you back to the 1740s. So this is the period that we're talking about to start off. Again, 1747, the year that I'm starting out my analysis of this of the century. Samuel Johnson is writing his English dictionary in London, and again, within a few years, the Maltese are doing that with the Soldanis. So although Malta is on the frontier of Europe, it's not the center of Europe. You can see the traits of an enlightened Europe filtering through. And that's going to filter through because of the communication there was with Europe, because of the trade that there was with Europe, and education, enlightened ideas, nationalism were bound to start affecting the middle class. They were not considered to be middle class, or because it didn't exist, but this merchant class was being affected by all this. And this class was able to achieve that in part due to merchant activity, but in part due to corsairing activity.
I see. So it's kind of greased the wheels and made the standard of education more, or the standard of information
Yes.
more available than it would have been otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, of course. And even this idea, because we get this idea that they wanted to have a free port, because we were fighting constantly fighting against the Ottomans, and we needed the East. Yes, there are grains of truth in that. But this idea that towards the end of the 18th century, the Maltese were asking for, through Vassalli, maybe he was used by a bigger party than himself, that he wanted a free port on the island. There was a free port on the island. Although there was this constant war, and you get the Ottoman Empire asking through Spain to ask the order for peace. Let's put this into perspective. So this great Ottoman Empire, and I repeat, who considered Malta as useless. However, it was an irritating rash. And so when peace was signed with Spain, a little, yes, we would like peace with the great empire that is Spain. P.S. Can you talk to the Maltese? We really would like to stop this war. And it was actually discussed in the Council of the Order of St. John.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, in your book you also mentioned some cases where the Ottomans had done a treaty with France, and France was leaning on the Vatican to
Yes,
slow them down or something.
there was constantly foreign intervention in Maltese policy. Rings any bells? It's still the same today. I think any prime minister that we have had, from Howard until our current one, surely one day or another, or maybe once a week, some foreign dignitary or foreign government is going to tell him, listen, can you do this, or can you stop doing this, or you cannot do that. Why do you have why are you sending passports? Why are you uh, obviously, I'm sure that no prime minister ever said that, but I would say, because I have nothing to sell, so I need to think outside of the box to survive on this island without any resources. And in this period, that thinking outside of the box was corsairing, amongst others, but corsairing was one of them.
Okay.
I feel I'm touching on so many subjects and not zeroing in on anything, Karl. But I really would like to get this point across. That the study of this period, especially the 18th century, can help us understand a little bit more what the island is today, and also what the Mediterranean is, because I think understanding the Mediterranean of this period can help us understand what's happening even in the world today.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and the reason I'm a bit quiet right now is that your answers opened up so many other questions, so many different areas that I don't even know where to start asking.
Fire away, fire away. If we run out of time, we'll come back next week.
Oh yeah, we could do that. Okay, so actually, one question. Do you have any idea why the whole thing about corsairing was never really taught as part of the history curriculum in primary education or secondary?
I,
Because
I,
this is fascinating stuff, and I really never heard of this practically before I was in my 20s.
the easy answer would be because we did not know about it. And again, I am not someone that you know. Before, I was told that these documents do not exist. So I was told, yes, we have course, we have documents, yes, we have, but they're not that detailed, or they're not. We don't have that much. Um, and today I stand before you and tell you we have so much, and I wish there were 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 students working on corsairing, because I maybe for the period that I am studying, maybe I am now starting to taste the froth of the cappuccino with regards to. I'm not even sipping on the cappuccino yet, because there is so much. And you know, before I came along, being a little weird, wanting to know how much it cost a corsair captain to buy a barrel of wine to pour for his corsairs. We did not have this information. Now, it was readily available for us, because one important thing that I cannot over accentuate is that as a nation, Malta always, uh, and yes, I might sound I'm being a bit utopian, we have always protected our past. There was always a niche of weirdos like me that protected our history and were studying that history. However, there is so much of it that we cannot read it all. I just to put you into perspective, the Tribunale degli Armamenti, which is one source of information for my documents. Now there are around thousands of papers, thousands. I haven't seen. Maybe I've seen a lot, but I haven't seen everything. Just to give you an idea, for this new project that I am working on, I am proud to say that readers will be able to have a dictionary of Maltese corsairs,
Oh,
which means that I am proud to say that thanks to the well-documented sources and thanks to the number of archivists and librarians that we have on the island, that we have always had on the island, we have the quarantine records of every ship that entered Malta. So I can claim that from 1747 until 1798, I will have the name of the captain, the ship he came in the date he came in, and his year of activity.
Okay.
And I was, I say if you if you're going to play, you need to play to win. And so I added to that every prize captain that sailed into harbor, because usually when you capture a ship, the most important thing, you don't sink it.
Of course.
So man it, commandeer the enemy ship and sail it into Malta. And so I also recorded those prize captains that came into Malta. And we have the list. We have all the information. Now this has been transcribed. It took me quite some time, too long for me to mention because even I started to think, oh God, I wasted so much time to do this. But now you can leaf through it, and first of all, you can understand that between 1747 and 1798, there was always a ship sailing out of Malta to steal at gunpoint everything and anything that came along and bring it back to Malta. Every year. There was not one year where there was no activity.
All right.
When the Order of St. John ships were not sailing out, you had the Prince of Monaco sailing out. When the Prince of Monaco was sailing out, you had the Tuscans and you have the Sardinians. But the crew mostly remained the same. And again, so that is to answer your question why we were not taught, because it's very complicated, because it might be not so nice to say that the basis of the Maltese economy in the 18th century was slavery.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So and this is something that I think we need to get to grips with. If you walk into St. John's Cathedral, and it's beautiful. I just love every corner of it, every inch of it. But we cannot escape the fact that one of the most beautiful monuments to Grandmaster, which is to Grandmaster Cotoner, has a slave below it in marble in a Catholic cathedral. It's you have to admit that it's quite something. Now, obviously, in hindsight, we can explain and understand that, but it's not easy to explain. It's not easy to understand that, and this brings me into another argument, which is sometimes history scares us, and that in my opinion, that's the beauty of it. But history teaches us that there were Maltese who actually became Muslim, and because it was easier for them to make money, and then they would come back and become Christian again. It is easier for us to forget that in the period that I'm talking about, the very few years of the 1747, 48, 49, slaves which tried to kill the Grand Master were hung, drawn, quartered, and burnt as a public spectacle. It's because it gets you get these stories, and it's not always PG.
No, yeah, that's for sure. So, as you just mentioned, slavery, I understand that was one of the big risks of sailing out, yeah? I mean, like you got captured, you're taken with your ship,
Yes.
and
Yes. The biggest threat for to you as a corsair sailing out of Malta is being captured. But being captured, well, I will correct myself. It wasn't the biggest because the biggest was dying.
Oh yeah, I mean, like after
Being,
dying, I mean.
being killed or drowning, or dying of VD, which was quite common
Okay.
at the time. But yes, slavery was a constant threat. It always lingered in the back of their minds, and we're lucky because we have letters of Maltese who are slaves in Tunis, in Constantinople, in Tripoli, sending letters back home. And again, they give us glimpse into what was happening and what was, what was the what it felt like to be a property of someone else. You were literally a property of someone else. Now we need to differentiate from American slavery. Being a slave in the 18th century did not mean that you were going to be enslaved forever. There were people who spent 48 years in captivity. But if you had the means, if you had the money, or if you were lucky enough, you were going to be ransomed off. Or else become Muslim and offer your services to the Ottoman Empire, to the Bey of Tunis or the Bey of Algiers.
Okay, if I understand correctly, there were networks to on both sides
Yes.
to trade prisoners and
Yes.
ransom people off. Yeah.
Yes. And again, these are networks that were not only in Malta. You have them in France, you have them in Spain, all around Europe.
I think if I remember correctly, there was also some some charities basically collecting for ransom for the
Yes.
destitute and so on. Yeah.
There was one in St. Paul's Church in Valletta.
All right.
And the Catholic one, there were quite a number. There's another one in Senglia, the L'Artalta Trinitari. Quite a number.
So, and it's interesting that basically we've got this network of, basically it's a diplomatic network going on, which, if I remember correctly, it wouldn't be interrupted even during, periods of war, yeah? If I understood correctly.
Yes, but even during war, these things were still being occurring. And just to put you into, give you one example, obviously during peace it was easier, and we have quite a list of them coming, for example, in 1802, when peace was signed between Great Britain and the Ottoman Empire, because it was all right, prisoner exchange sort of. But then during war, and when there was no hope because there was in a perpetual war against Islam,
Yeah, pretty much.
they used to get, your wife would go to Tripoli to try to ransom you off. She'll collect funds and then go to pay your ransom. You have examples where your wife was captured and she refuses to come back home because she's enjoying her life, her new life in Tripoli. You get this again. There are different examples.
Yeah, I think I recall a couple of examples. I think that you were doing on the TVM series, the Television Malta series.
Yes,
Yeah.
there was one, obviously, of Pietro Stellini. That is, I think, the most famous. That is one of those, uh, one of those discoveries that I think, to any historian, they don't come that often, and I think we can do that because I think I can find the letter over here, to literally read it to you, because the story is simple. So there was this corsair who got who was working on a ship leaving Malta in the 1790s. He was called Pietro Stellini, and he was shipwrecked, but got washed up ashore in Tripoli,
Oh,
and he
okay.
was enslaved. And we find, when you read the archives, you're in another world. Headphones on, I'm listening to Iswar, the music, just to get into the period,
Kind of full
and
immersion kind of thing.
yes, yes, I can't do it otherwise. So it's that sort of thing. But there are days that you constantly, going from one page to another, and you find nothing. On rare occasions, you strike gold, and you literally have, goosebumps. And this is one of them. And this is, I think, in my now starting to become long career as curator of the Maritime Museum and writing about corsairs, this has few rivals. And I see these two letters, and I go, oh shit, this is Pietro Stellini writing. And you're transported back to a letter that was held by a mother whose son is in chains in Tripoli. And it goes, dear mother, with this letter, I take the occasion to submit my fine and good health. And likewise, I do hope in our blessed God that you are fine. I also hope that my sisters and family are fine too. I pray for your blessing, and so I must relate to you my terrible ordeal and terrible destiny. After we left Malta, we sailed for 5 days, and on the fourth day of sailing in the evening, we sighted the city of Jerba. The next morning, we set sail to go to Sfax. Due to a southwesterly wind and a tempest throughout the day, on 4 separate occasions, we got completely overwhelmed by waves. But thank God we survived, and by sunset, everyone prayed for his miserable soul. We put our faith in the Madonna, and each and every one of us prayed forgiveness to each other for any shortcomings we had imposed on one another. Suddenly, a large wave hit the felucca. It is stated that we had to throw everything overboard to lighten our galliot. Barrels of wine and water, blunderbusses, pistols, swords, cannonballs, oars, clothes, everything was thrown into the sea. As we commended our souls to God once more. Just half an hour after midnight, we sighted Tajura. This Tajura is just off the coast of Libya. And my letter has just gone. I pressed something and it went all away. Just half an hour after midnight, we sighted Tajura, about 12 miles to the east of Tripoli. And being 3 or 4 miles away, we decided to weigh anchor. We had hardly done so when 2 large waves hit the galliot. The waves toppled the galliot, and all the men screamed for mercy while in the sea. I tried to swim since I wanted to try and hold on to the now overturned galliot. As soon as I did so, I was hit again by the waves. This time the galliot disappeared under the waves, and I could only hear the voices and screams of my dying shipmates. I could do nothing. I tried then to swim to shore. I spent 5 hours in the sea, and on 4 occasions I lost hope and was about to drown, and every time I took heart from the Madonna del Carmelo. On the 4th and final occasion, I gave up, and breathlessly I said, dear Madonna, why do you want me to die this ungrateful death? Why have you abandoned me, dear Madonna? I had given myself up for dead, when suddenly a wave hit me and washed me onto the shore, and there I lay with only my shirt, dying of cold. In the morning, I saw the galliot which had been washed ashore, along with our dead sailors. Only 7 of us survived. The rest never made it. On the terrible night, we got to know that 5 Turkish ships were lost. And now I have nothing left to tell you. I beg for your blessing. Send my regards to my family and friends, and even to Signora Margherita. I hope to be with you soon. I am at the house of the Pasha, and I beg you, dear mother, do not lament my great misfortune, since it is better to be a slave than dead like the others. So, you know,
That was intense.
yes, it's you are literally transported, in my humble opinion, 200 years. 200, you are there. You are there with him on the beach. You are there with him when everything seems to be lost. And he's writing all this. He's writing all this and sending it to Malta. And you can feel what this guy was feeling. It's as simple as that. Now, what is even more interesting is that if you were paying attention, I said there were two letters by him. And so next to this beautiful, moving letter to his mom, he's got one written to his wife. And he goes, "Dear wife, I give you the news you have always wished for me. That is, when you always cursed that I would fall a slave or perish at sea. You always prayed to God that something bad would befall me. Now I will give you your greatest consolation, and also console your friends and sisters who always had a grudge against me. You and your curses that I may drown. I actually drowned, and God has saved me. You have wished me a slave, and God has conceded you this grace. I am now a poor slave. Console yourself, be happy, and have fun, as if you had never known me, as if I was never your husband. Being the dog that I am, I have nothing else to tell you. Bless my children, and if you wish to send me a letter, give it to Signor Lippo di Musu or Giacchi at the Barriera. He has delivered the letters I have written to you, and if you don't want to write to me, neither will I write to you. If you want to forget me, even I will forget you. You will be fine. I pray to God that He gives me some help, like when He saved me. And this is why I hope He gives me strength to see my country again. I have been sick, and for a few days I was exhuming blood. But now I am feeling much better. Praise be to God. The memory of your words and actions hurt me even more than being a slave. Now you derive your happiness from my calamity. I am sorry that I cannot send you anything with this letter. As I have told you, I have been sick for a long time, and the little money I had, I used to buy some necessities. I have nothing else to add. Send my regards to my family and friends, Pietro Stellini.
Okay.
So, yes, that is historian gold there, because you have shipwreck, you have love, you have broken promises, you have motherly love, you have the love of his wife, because he was quite angry at her, but within a few years he came back to Malta, and they were living together in Zabbar, and they had a couple of kids together. But this is first-hand information
Yeah,
of a Maltese.
literally first-hand, unfiltered. It's like, yeah,
Yes,
it is gold. Yeah.
it's there, bang in the document, and I think there are a few things that can beat that.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, were shipwrecks very common in the Mediterranean area?
Yes. There are a lot of shipwrecks. These are wooden boats. Some of them were no longer than 50 feet, 30 feet. These were small boats. Some of them were small boats because they used to work in packs. So yes, there were a lot of shipwrecks.
Okay, yeah, because in the letter you were reading, he did mention a felucca, which isn't exactly a massive ship.
No, it isn't exactly the Flying Dutchman.
So, one more thing. In your book, you mentioned, and I'm sure you're going to mention even more of them in your next one. But you mentioned these colorful, larger than life corsair captains. Yeah, and
Yes.
do you have any particular favorites among them? I know it's not a question you ask a historian, but do you have any? Do you have any favorites?
Oh, ah. It's sometimes, what is your, anybody tells you what is your favorite song. There are too many to mention. And I think, yes, in this case, there are too many to mention. But if you ask me who is the most interesting,
Okay, go ahead.
then it has to be Guglielmo Lorenzi, who was from Corsica, who ended up coming to Malta as an 8-year-old boy, ended up being shot next to Dumikel Sherry in the name of Malta. That is this nation that we call home, in 1799. So that's a short answer to a potentially long answer.
Oh yeah, for sure, because
That I could.
there are many, there are so many of them that.
Yeah, there are so many. And the new book I am adding to the information that there is already in this um, uh, in the older version of the book. But we have new captains being discussed, and we have them over there. Obviously, you have this appendix of dictionary of Maltese corsairs, which will give us so much more.
That's going to be
Uh,
very useful. That's going to be very
yes,
useful.
yes, and it puts things into context as well. Um, but one other favorite, not favorite again, one other interesting character that maybe can lead us into, giving our viewers a bit of a scoop, is the guy who inspired the title for the new book, who is Giuseppe Scolaro, who for for years researching about him, I couldn't come to grips to why he became a corsair, because this guy was hailing from quite a well-off family who had been shipbuilders on the island and slave owners, very very rich and well-to-do slave owners. And for some reason, this guy, decided to sail out on a ship and become a corsair captain. And
Was it something he did when he was younger? Or was it more like a midlife
no,
crisis thing,
no,
like Steve Bonnet?
and this is, yes, good question. And I had no answer to this. Um, because he ended up being arrested and in prison because he accidentally attacked an Armenian merchant ship,
Well, as one does,
everyone does, and he, obviously, it was totally illegal, and he was arrested and he was taken to court. His investors had to pay thousands in reparations and all this. And then in one affidavit in court, when he's, like where the judge is going, listen, you had everything. Are you crazy? Why did you become a corsair captain? And he doesn't answer. And then his colleagues and fellow investors come along, and he said, and they go, I will say it in Italian, sounds nicer. But I'll start with English. He said, because Giuseppe Scolaro was in such a state, he was about to lose everything. His business was in the dumps. He had nothing left except to try it out, to become a corsair, because it was morte o fortuna, death or fortune. That's all. That was the whole reason why he went for the course. And now, because of this particular piece of paper, I'm quite interested in his character, quite interested in the repercussions of his choice, but also to it tells us a lot of what was happening in Malta during this period. So that leads me to tell you, to share with you that the new book is called Death or Fortune, Maltese Corsairs, 1747, 1798.
Okay. That's a fantastic title, and I will definitely be waiting for that. Will it be a limited print run like the name of the prince, or is it going to be a...
Get the message out there. So the powers that be will not have a limited print.
Okay, so just for everyone for everyone watching, this book. Just let me figure out where the camera is. This book is amazing. You should totally read it, and I would suggest you buy it, except that you can't buy it anymore, unfortunately, unless you find it
Yes.
secondhand or something like that. But yeah, so if anyone here, I don't think so, but if anyone here is into the printing of the next book, make it available.
Perfect.
Okay. So that aside, could we go back into the operation of the corsairs, because you mentioned that they went out in packs, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How would they work? Would they, because I'm would the whole would the pack be a whole expedition fund with the same investors? Would they have different captains who band it together? Would they split up things?
Uh, it, it, Probably this is a very easy answer because you had these guys leaving individually from Malta,
Hmm?
and then you know you're in Lampedusa, and you go, look, it's George ta wara l-Knisja. He's got he's got quite a good ship. Let's try and get him to create a contract which was drafted at sea, so
Okay.
that we work together. And it depended if George Tower Al-Knessia had a larger ship than yours, you would go, listen, George, you get 65%, I get the rest, or you get 40, I get 60. You get these arrangements, and then you start working out.
Okay.
Sometimes they not manage to work out, or they spend a few months, and it turns out that it's not a good partnership, and they say, listen, we can't work, I can't work like this. There were a lot of egos on board ship, and so you get successes, but you also get failures, and when they failed miserably.
Okay. Are we talking like lighting the other ship on fire, kind of miserable failure, or some?
Yeah, and, you get your men refuse to board the enemy ship because they know they have less percentage in the prize than
Oh, okay.
your partners, and it gets that sort of thing.
Not a great time to go on strike.
Yeah, no, not a great time to go on strike when you've got the enemy firing at you constantly. So yeah.
Okay, and another question about when they take a prize, whether it's a ship or goods or whatever. Did I understand correctly that once they're back to shore, then the tribunal, the armament has to vet it and check, okay, this has been taken lawfully, or
Yes.
this has been
Yes.
stolen lawfully or stolen unlawfully? How did that work? Because
Yes. This is what happens in a Maltese context. You had this tribunale. Now the tribunale was taking care of corsair ships flying the Order of Saint John,
exclusively.
exclusive.
All right.
Uh, Flying the Order of Saint John, or the Prince of Malta. The Monaco, the Sardinians, and all that. That is a question that we don't know where to look for. But
Okay.
I'm tracking them down. So watch the space. But it's yes, the Tribunale was in charge of vetting that this was a lawful prize. Now, usually they would vet any prize that came along and say yes. But if, for example, you get an example where a Maltese corsair captures a Greek ship with Turkish merchandise, and that means that the merchandise is Maltese. It can be captured by the Maltese, but the ship and the captain shall not be touched. If the Greek captain keeps on claiming that the merchandise is Greek, There were times that the Maltese drag the ship to Malta and tell him in court, okay, prove it. Now, there is a problem here because if you have wheat on board your ship,
Or perishables, yeah, I get that. Yeah.
perishable, you've got a limited time. So at times he would not risk doing this, at times he did just to get his own back. It gets very, very complicated. But again, it's quite interesting for us when it comes to these lawsuits because it gives us color and information, which fill in the pages of my book.
Yeah, I mean, on a certain level, it does sound ridiculous because, you're having a legal litigation where you're claiming that, no, I stole this lawfully, which is,
Yeah, exactly. So
at the same time, it's super interesting because you've got these whole networks of things going. Like, for example, yes, you can take the goods, but you cannot take the ship, or you can take these prisoners, but you cannot take
yeah,
these goods.
that's it. The variations are huge. The variations are huge. You get examples where you just capture a ship. Again, Greek sailors, Greek ship, but Turkish merchandise. Put a gun to the head of the Greek captain and tell him, okay, I think this costs 1,000 scudi. Give me 1,000 scudi and I'll let you go. I'm selling. And the Greek goes, so you are actually saying that this is now yours and I need to buy it off you and you haven't even touched it yet, still below deck. And the Maltese will go, yes, of course. So money, please. So that was quite a system. In my humble opinion, that is the funniest system.
Oh, for sure. And at the same time, I'm getting this idea that it works out like the concept of judicial duels in the sense that you get the set of laws which are very detailed and very complex
Yep,
to define, okay, when you can and when you cannot do violence, or when you can
exactly.
and cannot steal, and the body of rules is there to avoid arguments later. So,
It's all done within a legal framework,
yeah,
and
exactly.
that is the answer. This is the long answer to your first question. What is a corsair and what's a pirate? So we've done a full circle. I'm quite happy about that.
Nice. Now, on the other hand, I remember that I think you had mentioned that in one of your talks a few years ago about the excuses the corsairs would find to, wrangle out of the loss. Like, for example, if they were ordered,
Yes,
you cannot sail past this particular island, I think, or this far east.
yes, there were these limitations. There were these limitations. They existed, but they were they, they were loosely adhered to.
Yeah,
Loosely adhered to. And the more we studied this, the more we realized that they were loosely adhered to. It's like the use of indicators and no double yellow line parking in port. Loosely-
yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
So we've covered that. I'm just thinking again because there are so many aspects of what this could go into that sticking to the practical, going back to the practical side. What kind of armament would the ships be carrying?
The armament would have been, your typical 18th century weapons. So cannons, blunderbusses, muskets, um, uh, swords, grenades, pistols, and so those are every ship is going to have that. Then the kind of projectiles would be grape shot, cannonballs, and obviously lead bullets. Then there were ships which had mortars on board. There were ships which had larger caliber guns. There were ships which had no guns. The smaller ones had no cannons.
Okay.
for example. The ship of Pietro Stellini had no cannons on board, the one that we read the letter from. So that was something that occurred. So you had ships which were made literally to grapple onto an enemy ship,
And board
capture
and yeah.
board and bring it back to mooring.
Yeah, because I'm thinking having lots of. I think when people mention Blackbeard or whatever, the first thing they say, oh yeah, and the Queen Anne's Revenge had so many guns or whatever. It's like, but
Yeah.
you don't need to sink the other ship, so I can understand them as a threat. So yeah,
It's just a threat. It's just to show that shows, it's like how an any animal in a fight is going to show his teeth, and that's what was the use of a cannon. So it's this kind of the use of cannon was that kind of thing, unless you were confronted by an enemy corsair on an enemy military ship, which has no intention to capture you but to sink you.
okay,
So you need to sink.
fair enough. Okay, I see that.
I think we have a question.
From
Uh,
Fabian Naudia. So,
yes.
hi Fabian, by the way, was it always the traditional trading resource-based corsairing or even political? Did water borders affect their operations in this or advantage?
So was it always the traditional trading resources? Um, Trading resources. I think he's referring to what they were capturing, right?
I guess so, yeah. But Fabian, if you can clarify that, that would be useful.
I think mostly these guys were capturing. Um, uh, well, they captured anything, from bars of lead, bars of bronze, to boxes of saffron, to cloves, slaves, horses, camels. You know, I'll just this is the beauty of being having a lot of information. So in 1790, let's go here, 1791. So a galleot with a shabak. This is nicer. A shabak of Captain Picasso with 113 men captured 37 slaves. Then rice, cowhides, canvas, fabric made with flax and cotton, couscous, ship's biscuit, beans, three cows, cheese, and salted fish. His contemporary Michele Borch with so Michele Borch sends his prize into Malta with only 12 men because he actually captured a Martiniana, which is a trading vessel of the Ottoman Empire. And so he's got the ship. Then he's got pepper, he's got wax, he's got passoli in Italian, which are currants, figs, cumin, and nitrate. It's everything. You've got 150 goats, coffee, Cyprus wine, salted leather skins. It's just it keeps on going and going and going. These are another guy gets firewood, soap, tobacco, construction wood. Everything, lentils, sardines, whatever. There is henna,
Did I?
the dye
Yeah.
for the tattoos, because obviously tattoos were quite present in the Levant. So razors, for beards. I need one. There's endless. They were capturing everything and anything that floats.
Okay, to use the expression, if it's not nailed down, they will steal it. If it's nailed down, it's not nailed down well enough. Yeah. But to bounce off this question though, I think this is going back to an earlier period now. When the Corona Ottoman was captured,
Yes, 1762.
uh, was that kind of a political statement, or was it nope, it's there, we're taking it?
Uh,
Because I mean, a ship has value in itself, aside from any political
yes,
statement they were making.
obviously they captured the flagship of the Ottoman Empire, so that's got a statement in it. But you know, this is something that again brings me back to when I was talking to you about understanding what is political for Malta and what is political for the Ottoman Empire. The insularity of the island and the parochialism of Malta is 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 going to be accentuated in a Maltese context, and not as accentuated in Istanbul or in Naples. My biggest example would be the Great Siege.
Okay, yeah.
It's our Great Siege. It's not the Great Siege for the Ottoman Empire. It's not the Great Siege for the Tercios, which were helping the order out in Malta.
Yeah,
So
I get you.
so that is something that we need to take into consideration. But politically, everybody knew what the importance of the island was. Everybody, regardless of how hard we try to water down the importance of the island. Strategically, the island was essential to any European power that wanted to control the sea lanes, even when the order was here. So forget the idea of having Malta as a colony.
Hmm.
Uh, to be a powerful nation in the Mediterranean, you needed to control Malta. Control Malta politically with a small p, being allowed to harbor in Malta, being allowed to use the port facilities of Malta,
Okay.
being allowed to recruit sailors in Malta, being allowed to buy bread from Malta. Hence why bread in Malta was much more expensive than in Sicily.
Apart
Because,
from
well,
not having enough
yes,
fields
but there was a
agriculture
high
to supply
demand.
it, yeah. All right.
Yes, if people are paying for it, you're going to raise the
Oh, yeah,
prices.
of course.
Exactly.
Okay. Listen, I had never thought about that that way. I mean, like the small p control, the small p politics in there is
Yes.
yeah, it's quite heavy. I mean, like compared, okay, usually got the Knights and the French and the English, blah blah blah. But the interactions with all the other states in between is yeah.
I, Yeah, yes, Karl, and this is something that hopefully I will manage to get in my new book. This is a story of the island. This is not the story of the Order of Saint John. This is not the story of the French. This is not the story of the English. This is a story of the island, and corsairing should be considered as the story of the island. Yes, we are using a letter of marque, which is the Order of Saint John. Yes, we are using a letter of marque, which is the Prince of Monaco. But who are the people behind the letter of marque?
The people who are actually doing the work.
Behind
Yeah.
that letter of marque, you have an island community petrified of hunger and making ends meet through the economic activity of corsairing. That is, what we're looking at.
Uh, Jumping off that, and I don't know if it's maybe outside your period of research or whatever, but when's the earliest record of corsairing we have, or Because again, like you said,
Ha!
it's very integrated in the local society.
Ara, if you put a gun to my head, I would tell you it's been around since the Arabs were involved.
Okay, so we're saying
Uh,
the early AD, yeah.
1,000 years, 1,000 years,
Hmm.
easy. Listen, 1,000 years, 100%.
Okay.
Easy, easy. Medine. Sorry, I'm using Maltese. Yes, we're there. I think give or take. If I want to be a historian, because I'm not being a historian here when I say 1,000 years, but if I want to be accurate, maybe 800
All right.
years.
So we're talking well after the Roman Empire and
Yes,
well after the Arabs actually, yeah, because I believe that's
Arab,
yeah,
Arab period.
yeah,
Arab.
okay, because I believe that just around when the Norman period starts, yeah, give or take
Yes,
a century, yeah.
yes,
Okay. And yeah, because I was wondering because it is very like you said, it's very tightly integrated with the with society. Plus, you've got these institutions like the convent of nuns in Medina,
yes. Exactly. In Valletta.
Valletta. Okay,
Valletta. The cloister nuns of Saint Ursula. Who were instituted but now this brings us back to 1598.
okay. So it's
Um,
a later development than.
yes,
All right.
it's a little- it's a little- again, because corsairing existed here, but the Order of St. John made it the livelihood of the island because they had been doing it in Rhodos. They kept on doing it in the 16th century. By 1605, they turned it into an art form, practically.
Okay.
With regards to Earthman brick, it depends which version of Jurassic Park he's watching, but um,
No, he's just being silly. Everyone knows it was the ninjas. Yeah. So, yeah, for example, going back to the cloistered nuns, you've got basically an institution which is given a kind of it's kind of a tax at that point, yeah, because you get like a deposit
yes, it was around 5%.
five,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
5%.
to pray for the pray for the sailors on the
To
Corso.
pray for you to have a successful journey against the enemies of the Holy Catholic faith. That is the technical term that
All
one
right.
would use.
And were there kind of other superstitions based around again, I'm sorry that I'm jumping all over the place, but the topic has so many places
The
to come at
topic
it.
has so Um, there were even the names of the ships where there was
Oh,
superstition around the names of the ship. What kind of you try to get all the saints in the name of the ship, and that you have that makes for a lucky ship. You
right.
had the local parish priest that will bless your ship before you leave. There were quite a number of these. You get people paying money for various altars around the harbor to have protection against shipwreck, against defeat, and all that.
Okay.
There's quite a lot. There's quite a lot.
'Cause, yeah, yeah, again, that's I think there's this thing where people whose livelihood depends on practically random elements, like you've got the weather, you've got enemy activity, and whatever, tend to have these.
Yes, exactly, exactly. It is. Um, uh, even a simple thing with regards to there was a special liqueur that they were going to drink before they leave harbor. There's quite a lot, and again, these things are not easy to find, but we'll get them. You get them over there.
Okay. Yes, I wanted to ask also with regards to the Corso. I know that sometimes knights would take part in the corso? As in, the captain would have knights with him or something like that?
Yes, yes, there were. In the period that we're talking about, you get knights who are joining Maltese courses, and you get knights who are actually doing preparing and sailing out on their own
Captaining their own
in the name of
expeditions, kind
Star.
of thing. All right. Okay.
So anybody who tells you that the fact that we're only into sleeping with women and drinking and carousing in Malta, you've got all these examples.
So, going back, would that be part of their caravana? The duty they had to go out, or was
No,
that something else
to,
entirely?
to my knowledge, no. To my knowledge, no. It was part of um, their business. They wanted to do it. So it was a little bit of business, a little bit of adventure, a little bit of
Okay.
religious fervor, or national fervor with regards to anyone who was supporting the Duke of Parma or the Duke of Modena, for want of a better example.
Of course, because then you also had again Leopard was way before that, but yeah, they would take part in that kind of engagement as well.
Yes, yes, but again, every century has its own its own peculiarities,
Oh, for
and
sure.
the 18th century has this peculiarity where you get these guys sailing out in the name of their nation from Malta as being knights, or joining the Maltese corsairs with the flag of the Order of Saint John as subalterns or officials on board.
Okay. And was there any kind of prestige attached to it within the order? Like, okay, I mean, if you go out and you win this massive battle and whatever, I'm sure that you get more brownie points for it. But was it like something that not expected to do, but was encouraged, like for their own prestige within the order and stuff like that?
Uh, No, to my knowledge, no. I can't think of any example, but you get in this period a bit of some knights who really are in it for the adrenaline, and it's clearly written down that they're doing it, because they enjoy fighting, the art of war. They enjoy going around and blunderbussing their way through the Levant. It's very clear.
Okay. Everybody needs a hobby.
Yes, exactly. And this is theirs. This was this. This was this.
Okay, and let's. Oh, I had a question a second ago, but I forgot what it was. Yeah. Now, with regards to whatever foods and supplies were carried, because I know you also did a lot of research into culinary history and food supplies and that sort of thing. And I know that there was quite a difference between what the captain would be eating and what the regular sailors would be eating. So, did you find out more in that regard?
Yeah, there is now so food was always important. A happy crew is more profits at the end of the day.
And they won't harm
Uh,
you, so yeah.
Yes, and so they were investing. We have information for it. Now I can tell you that anybody who's drinking a good bottle of Frappato from Sicily, this was the kind of wine that you are going to find in on board Corsair ships. The kind of grappas that were found are constantly a key player in drink on board ship. But what is interesting is the use of tea, and
Hmm.
they were drinking, and which is it was quite new for the period, and also then when you get to the food, you start finding traits of what was being eaten on the island.
Okay.
So the kind of bread, the kind of pork stews, the kind of beef stews, But one favorite is a rampage of a crew that went off the charts, landed on a Greek island, raped and pillaged anything that came along, and then slaughtered 3 cows. They were around 24, and spent 2 days, and I'll use the modern term, barbecuing their way through these commandeered livestock of this Greek island. They came back here and were arrested and imprisoned for a number of years.
Was it a
Yes.
case, was it a case that they had run out of food or something, or did they just,
No, because these guys were out of prison. You know, the most some of
Okay.
there were moments when ships were out of any good sailors, and so you just go to the local goal and say, okay, I need 12 men. Any volunteers? So sort
Okay.
of
Scraping the
Wagner,
bottom of the
Wagner
barrel,
in
yeah.
Ukraine at the moment.
Okay, I get you.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay. Oh, this is actually a good question. Are there any famous cannibal pirates? Not in the Mediterranean, I would imagine.
We have one example
Do we?
of escaping from cannibals, but it goes to 1830 something, so not my period.
In the Mediterranean area?
No, no, no. They
Ah, okay.
were
I was wondering.
West Africa. West Africa.
Okay. Okay. So again, this goes back to when we're talking about food. So it's not the typical, cheapest grog they could find or whatever. So there was
No,
some
they were
effort to keep
spending
them
beyond that.
happy and fed. Yeah.
No, no, they were doing a lot and a lot of sort of taking care of their stomachs, so to speak, and they were spend the officials were spending quite a lot of money um, on this kind of food because they could afford it. So there was veal, like pork brains with pasta and tagliatelle. There are a lot of these examples, but no recipes, unfortunately.
Okay. I'm guessing that cooks were in high demand as well. Then.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, and you, on the larger ships, you had cooks, especially for the captain, for example. Yeah, the captain, our Giuseppe Scolaro, the guy
Hmm?
who the debtor or fortune, had actually his own barber on board. Well, yes. Uh, and for Earthman brick, no, potatoes were not introduced in the island in the 18th century. They were an import to the island in the very first years of the 19th century. So no, potatoes on the island were used for black magic. And that is the only evidence that we have.
Okay. 1 second. Chefs and okay. One last question from me. So, would larger ships also have doctors on board, or in the event of injury, for example, what would happen to the crew?
Well, there was every ship had to leave with a medical chest on board, and we have details of these guys being taken care of. Um, uh, and I finished this part of the book only last week, and so you had people who were very well taken care of. So you had all right, it wasn't the medical knowledge that we have today, but they were quite well taken care of. But my favorite one is a doctor who self-administered grappa from 8 o'clock in the morning, who actually died of intoxication during one particular campaign.
Okay.
Right. Whoops. So yeah, yeah, but they had quite good standards considering the period. We get even foreign corsairs coming in with scurvy and they are taken care of by the local infermeria of Spoleto.
Yeah, but the Infermeria is, at the time, I think it was one of the
Yes,
best medical institutions in Europe anyway, so yeah.
indeed, indeed.
Okay, so we're getting close to 2 hours here. That went by a lot faster than I thought it did. So before we wrap up, do you have any other points you would like to make, or any items you'd like to talk about?
No, I think one of the what I wanted. So just to answer, Archman Brick is we're looking at illnesses which had to do scurvy, venereal diseases, and then amputations that go badly because you've been hit by a cannonball in your foot. They chop it off, and gangrene sets in. Diarrhea, dysentery. This is the kind of problems that these guys were facing. Karl, what I want to add is that the story of Corsairs is, in my humble opinion, quite interesting, and there's so much more to talk about.
No kidding.
What is important to me is that we are talking about a community which we are separated from them by around 200, 250 years, and sometimes you feel so close to them, and sometimes you feel so far away from them. And that brings me to things like slavery, to killing someone because of their religious belief or their political beliefs for that. What is nice about that is that there is so much more to learn, there is so much more to publish, there is so much more to write. So watch this space, and hopefully everybody can get a piece of the new book coming out, hopefully end of this year, and we'll learn a little bit more what it means to live on a rock in the middle of the Mediterranean without any resources, just a piece of paper to steal everything and anything that belongs to our enemies.
And cannons. Yeah, we had cannons too.
Yes.
Okay, Liam, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating, and I hope you'll be able to join us again once you're closer to publishing. So, yeah, you can tell
It
us more
will
about
be,
the new book.
it will be a pleasure. It will be a pleasure. Thank you, Kyle.
Okay, thank you, Liam,
Bye.
and thanks everyone for watching. We will be back next week with uh, Frankie D. Crafter. So, thank you, everyone. Liam, thanks again, and have
Bye.
a great night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.